Marge, I'm going to mute myself.
Well, thank you. Hi, Sunny. Thanks for being here.
Welcome. I will now call the January 21st, 2020 Lane Community College Board of Education meeting to order. In recognition of Governor Kate Brown's Stay Home, Save Lives executive order to combat the spread of COVID-19, this meeting is being held remotely. I'd like to remind board members and staff to keep themselves muted and to use the raise hand feature when you would like to speak. Board members are also asked to have their video turned on so you are visible to the viewing public. Donna, could you please take the roll?
Melanie Munzer.
Here.
Angela Van Kraus.
Here.
Mike Eyster.
Here.
Matt Keating.
Here.
Chelsea Jennings.
Here.
Rosie Pryor.
Here.
Lisa Fragola.
Here. Great, thank you. So we'll begin our meeting this evening with an acknowledgement of Homeland, and I'd like to welcome Kenny Asheri from LCC EF, who will be reading that this evening.
Thanks, Lisa. I'd like to start our meeting with the acknowledgement that the land we are on is the traditional homelands of the Kalapuya people. The Kalapuya were stewards of this land for over 14,000 years before their traditional way of life was forever disrupted and destroyed. We start our meeting with humility and reverence for the original inhabitants, the Kalapuya.
Thank you, Kenny. So now that we have done that, at this time, I am going to recess the LCC Board of Education meeting in order to conduct a public hearing. So the LCC Board of Education meeting is recessed, and I will now call the public hearing to order. LCC is requesting to use the construction manager, general contractor contracting method, or CMGC method, for the new health professions building and the Building 19 seismic project. Tonight's public hearing is an opportunity to provide testimony regarding the proposal to adopt the CMGC construction method for these buildings. Statements for this hearing should pertain solely to the use of the CMGC method for Building 19 and the Health Professions Building. Statements for all other items will take place in the regular board meeting. If you would like to provide testimony, please use the raised hand feature and the chair will call on you in the order you have raised your hand. For those of you viewing the meeting on a computer, laptop, or other device, select participants at the bottom of the screen and click once on the blue hand icon. Some updates have started to hide that blue hand in the emojis if you can't find it. For those listening to the meeting on a phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand. The meeting host will unmute your speaker, but there will be no video feed, but we'll be able to hear you. 3 minutes are allotted to each speaker. So I do not see any hands raised at this time, but I will, I see one hand. Great, thank you. So I'd like to acknowledge Johanna or Hannah Achapole. Please feel free to correct me if I did not get that last name correct.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I wanted to speak about the culinary program. Is this the right time to do that?
No, right now we're having a public hearing regarding the CMGC method for Building 19 and Health Professions Building. Statements for all other items will take place in the regular board meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. You could just keep that hand up and I'll know that you would like to speak during that time.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if there is anyone else besides Johanna who would like to speak during the public meeting regarding the CMGC proposal, now would be the time to raise your hand. Okay, I am not seeing any raised hands, so I will now close the public hearing and reopen the LCC Board of Education meeting. All right, and we will resume our board meeting agenda with the president's report. Dr. Hamilton?
Thank you, Chair Fragola, and welcome everyone to the first board meeting for 2021. The symbolic day of first today and new beginnings with the inauguration of our 59th president, Joseph Biden, and our first Black and Asian female vice president, Kamala Harris. We begin 2021 with a new president and a new vaccine for the novel coronavirus. You'll be hearing an update on the college's role as a vaccination center a little later on tonight. As we look back, however, we do mourn the loss of several friends of the college, among them faculty member Dave Shetterling, who lost his life in a tragic accident last month with his daughter. Our deepest condolences to his wife, Beth, who worked with our international students for over 20 years. We also lost one of the greatest supporters of this college, Dr. Al Brower. He was in Zone 1 and he held that board seat from 1964 to 1976. He also led the initiative to build our Florence campus. He will be missed. I wish to thank our BSU students, along with Dr. Lawrence Rashid and everyone who helped make this year's Martin Luther King celebration such a success. We heard inspirational words from Oregon Senator James Manning, followed by a presentation from Dr. Robert Boulard on the importance of environmental justice. Congratulations also to our own Greg Evans for receiving the 2021 Dr. King Service Award. The college continues on its 7-year self-study and preparation for our fall visit from our NUQ accreditation team. We're honored to have Mr Ramaswamy, president of the Northwest Commission on Colleges and Universities, here with us tonight, and you'll hear from him a little bit later. The college also continues to work on developing its new strategic plan. This process encourages the college to reflect back on where it has been and to allow itself to dream on where it needs to go. I wish to thank all of our faculty, students, and classified who served on this committee. Our college continues its work on evaluating and improving its governance system. I'm looking forward to seeing the final recommendations at the college's council in February. I'm very happy to announce that Lane's received notification from the Department of Ed that we're going to receive over $8 million as part of our COVID relief package. This money will be used to provide relief to our students and all of the college to support operational funds that were used from lost revenue. We thank all of our public servants who worked hard to make sure we obtain that money. And finally, I wish to announce that Lane Community College was part of a statewide consortium recently awarded a $5 million grant from the Department of Labor to strengthen skill development for dislocated and incumbent unemployed workers. Specifically, the grant will be investing to use technology to create online and hybrid delivery in advanced manufacturing while integrating cyber awareness in our manufacturing pathways. Also, congratulations to our Native American Student Coordinator, Lori Tapahanzo, for her leadership in submitting grants to the Oregon Community Foundation to assist our Native American students who have been impacted by COVID. That concludes my report.
Great, thank you. So we will now move to statements from the audience, and board policy BP 320 states that the board will not respond directly to issues raised by the audience, but will refer those issues to the president for appropriate action. However, we do appreciate attendees' participation in tonight's LCC board meeting and the willingness of stakeholders to address the board. So again, please use the raise hand feature, and I will call on you in the order that you raised your hand. So Johanna, why don't we start with you?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. My name is Johanna Acapol, and I am an alumni of the culinary program. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about how awesome the program is, and I hope that it does not get shut down. I know that even though a lot of restaurants are suffering now, I think there's going to be a new influx of new restaurants, and I think that the prep cook certification one-term program is going to be really important. There's always going to be jobs for care facilities, and I think food safety is more important now, more so than ever because of COVID, and I think that one-term program is going to be great for individuals going into that field. And also now the culinary program has a one-year program as well that I think will continue to help train individuals in the food service community, certainly in institutional cooking, which I think we're going to see a lot more of. I definitely benefited from the program in kind of offshoot ways. I'm actually a food stylist and food photographer for local ranches. I run the social media for Anderson Ranches, Oregon Lamb, and some cattle companies as well. And I wouldn't have learned what I have in order to be able to do that if I hadn't attended Lane Community College. So please don't shut the program down. That's all.
Thank you very much, Johanna. Thank you for being here tonight. Is there anyone else who would like to give public comment tonight? Okay, seeing none, I will move us on to the consent agenda. So are there any items that board members would like to remove from the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the consent?
Approval.
That was move approval by Rosie. Do I have a second? I saw Mike's
Second.
hand. Okay,
Second.
Mike has seconded. Okay, so Donna, would you please call the roll?
Sure. Melanie Munzer,
Aye.
Angela Van Kraus,
Aye.
Mike Eyster,
Aye.
Matt Keating,
Aye.
Chelsea Jennings,
Aye.
Rosie Pryor,
Aye.
Lisa Fragola.
Aye. Great, we've approved the consent agenda, and we'll move into our discussion and action items for the evening. We have a special guest tonight, and I'm going from the Northwest Commission of Colleges and Universities. And I'm going to let Marge go ahead and introduce him because this is the first time that I have met him as well.
Oh, it is a great pleasure to introduce Sonny. When I came here, Sonny was fairly new himself, and I was overwhelmed with his warmness in dealing with presidents, new and senior presidents. And it is just my great pleasure to have him here and talk a little bit about accreditation and what it means to the community colleges. Sonny?
Yeah. President Hamilton, thank you so much for having me here, and good evening to your board members and others as well. This is a great day for America, as Marge said. We've gone through the inauguration, and paraphrasing Ronald Reagan's famous word, speech from his inauguration, it's a miracle. And indeed, we saw the events of a couple of weeks ago. And it's a miracle that we're here today, and what a difference a couple of weeks makes. And so I'm excited about the new presidency, and I think all of us collectively are excited about it, about the presidency as well, and look forward to some great things happening in this great nation of ours. Again, thank you very much, Marsh, for having me here this evening to share with you a little bit about higher education and a little bit about accreditation and the sort of whys and wherefores of accreditation itself. And President Hamilton, didn't say so, but I'm certain all of you know that Lane Community College is accredited by the Northwest Commission, my organization. And so what I want to do here is to go ahead and, I thought about what I was going to say, and I was just going to come in for a few minutes and say a few words and then have you ask me some questions and things like that. And Mars and I connected yesterday in the morning and spoke for a few minutes. And I kept thinking about what is the message I want to convey to you. And I thought, I want to convey to you here this evening in the next about 10 minutes or so, and then leave about 10 minutes for Q&A, is the role of community colleges in higher education in America. And for me, and I know this is true for Marge as well, and for your institution as well, student success and equity issues are critically important. That is the raison d'etre for Lane Community Colleges being itself. And so I want to start off by giving you a little bit of an overview of the global situation that we've got in regards to the trends that are impacting higher education itself across America, certainly, but we see this across the globe. And there's a whole slew of things that are happening that are having a very significant impact. Every day you get up in the morning as educators and or students, you get up in the morning and you are being impacted by these various things that we've got, whether it's the demographics that are going on, the competition that we see the aging of America and the decrease in college enrollment, and certainly the pandemic that we've seen the impacts, very intense impacts that it's had. And then the need for upskilling and reskilling and continuing education that we're seeing as well. In all of these areas, by the way, every one of these areas, institutions like Lane Community College has a very, very significant role to play. And I'm particularly, concerned about what's happening in America, this science and intellectual denialism that we see. And again, institutions like Lane Community College have a significant role to play. And so this is the context in which we're operating, you as educators and me as an accreditor, and I'm involved in the higher education enterprise as well. And then, of course, all of us know that 2020 happened. And we've never seen anything like this before, certainly the pandemic, and then the horrific events of the killing of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Aubrey Ahmaud and all these other folks that were brutally murdered, and just because they're Black or brown or whatever else that we've got as well. And then there's this calls for equity itself across America. And certainly we've seen protests and conflict even as recently as just a couple of weeks ago that we saw as well. That is the sort of the context of 2020. And so when you take the trends impacting higher education and then you look at these impacts of these events of the last few months and the last year itself, it all brings it to a point where we need to think of, well, what is it? What is our role in higher education? Why should we care about student success and equity itself? And we have a critical role to play in ensuring that every student that comes to our institution is able to achieve their aspirational goals. It doesn't matter where they come from, what background they come from, what sort of an educational background do they have, what strata of society they belong to, that every individual is provided an opportunity, and that there are some individuals who need to be provided a little bit of a better opportunity as well. And that's what this equity is all about. And if we don't focus on equity itself and don't focus on student success itself, I think there's some very significant costs to us, to society, to all of us collectively. And certainly there's a requirement that we treat everybody equitably and fairly, and that everybody receives the what they deserve, in quotes, and that we make that extra effort to make sure that every individual is properly taken care of and helped as well, and that opportunities are afforded to all people. Does not matter where they come from, what background they have, and all that too. That is a fundamental reason for why we're interested in equity and student success. And certainly we throw these terms around: diversity, equity, and inclusion. And oftentimes we throw these terms around without even thinking about what it means. And I wanted to share this particular set of bullet points with you, because it's just a reminder to all of us that the diversity, equity, and inclusion are not just some check the box type of a thing that somebody someplace in Salem or Washington, D.C. says that, Mars, you better go ahead and give us these data about the number of African Americans you've got, the number of Hispanic Americans you've got, the number of tribal Americans you've got, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it is a fundamental reason for why we are who we are. That is, that we create the environment in which everybody feels included. And then again, going back to this fairness and justice itself that I referred to earlier, and then that we develop and deploy norms that allows every individual to feel welcome, appreciated, and valued as members of society as well. And so really, when you think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, it is enshrined in our laws. It is required. You have no ifs or buts about it, by the way. In fact, Mars has no ifs or buts about ignoring these rules that we've got, these regulations we've got in regards to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And oh, by the way, it's also required by the U.S. Department of Education and by the Northwest Commission. Those of you that are involved in accreditation itself know that these, in our standards and our eligibility requirements, we require institutions like Lane Community College to pay attention to these issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then last but not least, this is a hallmark of humanity, that it is, to invoke what one of my favorite people on earth, Pope Francis, says is, I am my brother's keeper. That it is incumbent on me to ensure that I, ensure the well-being of every individual that I come across, that I work with. And so I am my brother's keeper. That's part of this context of, of diversity, equity, and inclusion itself. And when you take that sort of a reference point in regards to equity and success, and then look at the purpose of higher education itself, the reason for why you are as a higher education institution, it is to promote a whole series of things in people that come to our institutions, whether it's the promoting intellectual growth or helping inculcate informed civic engagement, or this idea of helping them achieve social and economic mobility. All of these are part of the purpose of higher education itself. And the efforts that we talk about in regards to equity and success are really tied together in thinking about the purpose of higher education itself. And then when you juxtapose the purpose of accreditation, where I come from as the Northwest Commission on Colleges and Universities, it is about a peer evaluation system that takes an institution like Lane Community College, and then it measures your college against standards and requirements and policies that we've got, and that it is about continuous process improvement. And were you to go through this process of meeting these standards and eligibility requirements and policies, then you become eligible for money. I mean, it comes down to money, but really, to me, the most important reason for becoming accredited is really about student achievement. It's about learning and success, It is about accountability. It's about ensuring that there's something about quality, that Lane Community College, when it offers courses and programs and things like that, that there is a quality. In fact, Johanna just referred to the wonderful program that you've got in culinary studies. And that's what it's about. And then, of course, it's also about continuous process, continuous improvement itself that we need to be thinking of. And so our vision, Northwest Commission's vision itself, fundamentally, it's about promoting student success and closing equity gaps. This is something that we've really been focused on over the last couple of years since I came on board as the president of the organization. And so what we do is we accredit institutions like Lane Community College by applying evidence-informed standards. That is, it's data-driven. It's not something that I pull out of the hat and say, okay, you're accredited or not, but we look at actual data and evidence that you're indeed making progress, that the needle is moving. And, oh, by the way, it results in student achievement and success. That's the ultimate goal that we've got. The outcome we're all looking for is student achievement and success itself. And so the foci that that we really engage with you in is everything from what happens to the students to closing gaps, equity gaps, using data and evidence, as I said, to be able to inform us on the progress that you're making, onto developing accountability and transparency, and this idea of analytical self-assessment in the accreditation process. It is your ability to assess yourself is what is critically important as well. So we have a series of achievement measures that we deploy when we send our evaluators to your campus. And as I said, as I've been saying, we focus on student success and closing equity gaps. And what we do is to use disaggregated data. And the data needs to be disaggregated. One of my, I know Marge has heard me say this, one of my all-time favorite statisticians joke is, my head is in the freezer, my feet are in the oven, on average, I'm okay. When we use averages, that's all we get is averages. But when you dig a little deeper, that's when you see that there is actually, warts and all, how beautiful you look. And we want to be able to disaggregate data and to use those data to be able to compare against your regional and national peers, and then help you develop the path forward on continuous improvement, and that you're transparent in everything that you do. It's not some little secret that is being put together by a cabal of individuals that Marge is working with in her office on your campus, but it is transparent to everybody, to the students, to the faculty, the staff, and of course to every stakeholder, every parent, every alumnus, and others that have an interest as well. And so I want to leave you with this thought that higher education and accreditation are truly a journey. And they're a means to an end. The end itself is about student success and equity. And I'm been having my conversations with Marge and also looking at the data and all the information that I've been provided by my staff about Lane Community College. I know for a fact that you are focused on these issues of student success and equity as well. And I wish you the best in all of your endeavors. And thanks very much, Marge. I'm open for any questions or comments people may have.
Great, thank you very much. Are there any questions for Mr. Ramaswamy? Mike?
I can only imagine what COVID and distance learning and sudden adjustments, those kinds of things that we've lived with, the impact they've had on trying to assess. Have you had to flex your standards to accommodate the abrupt changes that have been necessary in higher education?
Mr. Eyster, thank you very much for that. I hope I pronounced that name right.
You did.
I thank you for that question, that observation of that question. So the bottom line is no, we've not modified our standards. We still apply the same standards. But what we've done is work with institutions like, for example, Southwest Oregon Community College and others across our region of sending our evaluators virtually. And we've been able to go ahead and measure the institutions against the standards and go through that whole process. And we've not had to change any of our standards. We refuse to do it. the Department of Education offered us the flexibilities to be able to offer flexibilities to the institutions, including your institutions, to be able to teach courses online, and then also for us to do the virtual evaluations. And we also held our commission meeting, by the way. Our commissioners were convened. In fact, last week, as a matter of fact, convened virtually as well. So bottom line is, no, we did not change our standards, and we still hold institutions like Lane Community College to those standards.
Matt Keating?
Thank you. And thank you for the presentation and the uplifting words about this historic moment and today's inauguration. A question about the regional aspect in regards to accreditation. What may work in Washington may not work in Idaho, may not be the same as Oregon. And I find some stumbling blocks in regards to our students' ability to transfer anywhere to any four-year accredited university in the state. Are you seeing similar stumbling blocks throughout the region? And what could the state of Oregon do better to ensure that our 17 community college students transfer credits can transfer to any one of the accredited four-year universities?
So, Mr. Keating, what a wonderful question. And maybe, you've been tracking what's been happening in the state legislature as well here in Oregon. And I was asked by Senator Dombrowski to meet with the committee, the Senate committee, and to provide my insights from my perspective as an accreditor on these obstacles that are, may occur in certain contexts. Our requirement is that no institution, can set these artificial impediments. And as a matter of fact, almost the very first time I met with Marge and her colleagues here, I think going back maybe even a couple of years ago, if I'm not mistaken, this question came up, and I was asked the same question by the Oregon Higher Education Coordinating Commission as well. So, in the background, I've been working with them on trying to figure out the best path forward to create a seamless path for students. Students should not be penalized because we've got these artificial constructs of, community colleges and four-year colleges and things like that. And there is no law in the world, i.e. Washington, D.C., nor anywhere else, nor as an accreditor, we have any standards or requirements that prevents a student that completes a particular set of courses and or degrees can go on to achieve whatever else they want to do at other institutions as well. And for whatever reason, Oregon seems to be conflicted. And if you look at, for example, other states, there's the seamlessness. Nevada is an excellent example. In fact, I shared these examples with the Senate committee as well. Montana does it really well. So does, for example, when I was in Indiana, when I was at Purdue, we worked with the Ivy Tech colleges at Vincennes University to be able to develop these seamless transfers and things like that as well. So there are some best practices that are available, and we've provided all of that information to the Senate committee. And I think there's going to be some, legislative action that's going to come through that's going to help the state of Oregon as well.
Thank you. I certainly hope so, and I look forward to being helpful in that realm.
Are there any other questions from board members? Okay, not seeing any hands. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, and I hopefully will see you in the future as we dive into future process.
Oh yeah, thank you very much, Ms. Fragala, and I wish I were there in person in your community. I love Oregon. I used to live in Oregon, as some of you may know. And maybe the next time, Mars, y'all have a meeting like this, or invite me, and I'll be sure to drive on down. Okay.
Great.
Stay safe and take care of yourselves, and good luck to you. Thank you for what you do. Appreciate it very much.
Same to you, sir.
Bye.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is the annual auditor report. Following the close of each fiscal year, the college has an external audit conducted, and we're going to hear about that from VP of Finance Marty Hannafin and Greg Holmes.
Great. Good evening, everyone. We have with us this evening two individuals who have been here before around this time each year, Ken Coons and Darren Bourne. They will be walking you through the completed comprehensive annual financial report, AKA the FY20 financial audit. Without further ado, then I would like to introduce them. I think Darren will be speaking this evening.
Actually, Marty, both of us will be speaking this
Okay.
evening. And thank you for the introduction. Board members, President Hamilton, we're very pleased to be able to present the audit report this evening. Normally, this report is presented to you in the month of December, so we're 1 month later this year. And I'd like Darren to discuss a little bit about the timing of the audit this year.
Sure. Community colleges across the state have faced challenges, as you know, in responding to COVID-19 and transitioning to staff working from home and converting classes to an online format. And as you might expect, this had an impact on the audit, as both staff as well as our firm were forced to adapt to some of these changes to the workflows and the way that we normally would go about doing the audit and accessing the information that we need. Much of our work this year was done remotely, and I'd just really like to acknowledge the staff at the college that helped facilitate setting us up to be able to work remotely and do a big chunk of the work from here. That's not to say that we didn't do a significant amount of work on site at the college, because there's really only so much that we can do remotely, but the assistance of the staff at the college really made a big help in us being able to do a big chunk of the audit remotely this year. Ken, would you like to talk a little bit about the financial statement opinions?
I would like to. Basically, there are three components to the audit engagement. The first component deals with the financial statements themselves that are presented for audit. And our responsibility there is to determine whether the financial statements are fairly presented. That is, whether they are accurate. The second component of the audit deals with money that you have received from the federal government. And there are certain specified auditing requirements regarding those federal funds. And there are opinions in the audit report, in the comprehensive annual financial report, that address the federal monies that you have received during the year. The third component of the audit is basically to determine whether the college has complied with certain state laws and regulations related to its financial operations. So those are basically what is addressed in the audit report itself. I'm going to start out by covering our independent auditor's report on the financial statements themselves. This is the base cornerstone of any audit report itself. And that report is on pages 1 through 3 of the comprehensive financial report itself. So basically, this report indicates in the first paragraph, actually the second paragraph, that management is responsible for the financial statements. So the financial statements and all of the additional supplementary information that is included in Lane's audit report is based upon the records that are maintained at the college by college personnel. That is the basis of all the financial statement amounts, the basis of all the financial statement disclosures in the footnotes themselves. Under the auditor's responsibility paragraph, it basically indicates that our responsibility as independent auditors is to form an opinion on the financial statements. And in doing so, we follow generally accepted auditing standards And since federal money is involved, we also follow required government auditing standards. This means verifying financial statement amounts from both internal sources and internal records, as well as outside records. For example, bank balances, investments in the local government investment pool, those things are all confirmed with the banks, confirmed with LGIP. So there's a lot of information that is confirmed from outside sources, as well as information that is verified from internal records themselves. That paragraph goes on to indicate that we have gathered sufficient information to form an opinion on the fairness of the financial statements themselves. So as we turn to the top of page 2, this page shows our opinion on the financial statements themselves. I'm going to read it instead of paraphrasing it. And there's a little sentence that says, based on our audit and the report of other auditors. The other auditors refer to auditors for the foundation. The foundation is included in this report because it's a component unit. So other auditors audited that. We audited the college itself. In our opinion, based on our audit and the report of other auditors, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of Lane Community College and Lane Community College Foundation as of June 30, 2020, and the respective changes in financial position and, where applicable, cash flows thereof for the year then ended, in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. There's a lot of words there, but this is a clean opinion on the financial statements. It's an unmodified opinion. It's the best opinion that any entity can receive and can earn. Basically, Lane Community College, through the records it has maintained, has earned and has received a clean opinion. Basically, what this means is that you as a board, external users such as your lenders, your bond people, your public can rely upon the financial information and financial disclosures in the comprehensive annual financial report as audited by an independent third body. Now, there are also some other paragraphs in there that deal with supplementary information. The supplementary information that's primarily in this report is related to each of your separate funds, the general fund, the special revenue funds, enterprise funds. Those schedules show actual revenues and actual expenditures compared to budgeted revenues and budgeted expenditures for the year. Those opinions at the bottom of the page express a clean, unmodified opinion on those financial statements, and they also can be relied upon as audited externally. So that basically is the opinion on the financial statements. It's the best opinion that you could receive, and it's the opinion that you have earned for the 2019-2020 year.
Great, thank you, Mr. Kuhn. So I did want to let you know we had about 15 minutes on our agenda tonight for this item, and I'm noticing that you're just getting through the first piece, financial statements, and so are you going to cover the other components as well?
I had planned to. How far am I into?
So we have about 7 minutes left in this section.
That is going to work great.
Great, thank you very much, sir.
Yep, that's going to work great. Let me got to flip my papers here. Let me turn to pages 78 and 79. I'll go through this one fairly quickly here. In relation to the college's audit, there's an entity-wide requirement to look at internal controls and compliance with various contracts and regulations. Basically, pages 78 and 79 indicate that on an entity-wide basis, we looked at the internal controls relative to the preparation of your financial statements, and we did not find any weaknesses in those internal controls. The top of page 79 indicates that we looked at whether the college had complied with various contractual agreements that might affect the financial statements themselves. And we did not find any exceptions to contractual arrangements that would have a financial impact. So basically, those are entity-wide financial statements. And I'd like Darren to cover the opinions dealing with the federal monies that were received by the college. That they begin on page 80.
As a recipient of federal funds, the college is required to have an audit of its federal award programs conducted under what's known as the Uniform Guidance. This is also referred to as a single audit of federal grant programs. And each year, the auditors are required to select from the college's federal programs based on size and risk, and on kind of a rotating basis to select the programs to receive closer scrutiny. Now, at the college, the student financial aid programs are selected and tested every year just due to their sheer size and significance to the college. So we always end up testing student financial aid programs. This year, in addition to the student financial aid, we tested a CARES Act program called the Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund. Now, the college has received more than one program under the CARES Act, but the largest one affecting last fiscal year was the Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund. The college was awarded a little over $3 million under that first round, and half of that was earmarked for direct payments to students, and the other half to reimburse the college for costs associated with COVID-19 response. The results of our testing of these programs were that the college complied in all material respects with the compliance requirements applicable to these programs, and we noted no significant deficiencies in internal control over compliance in these programs. And then the last area of the audit, the last opinion that we have, has to do with the college's compliance with various state laws and regulations. We're asked as part of the audit to look at some of the compliance with different aspects of Oregon state law and how the college has complied with those. Some examples of those include testing to see that the college's deposits are collateralized properly and that excess cash is invested in appropriate and authorized investments, and also to look to see that the college complied with state budget law and other areas, including public contracting and bidding for large construction projects. Those are just a few examples. But the results of our testing in this area showed that the college was in substantial compliance with these laws and regulations outlined by the state. Ken, would you like to add anything else?
Well, basically, in summary, the college received a clean opinion on its financial statements. No exceptions in the internal controls or compliance entity-wide. A clean opinion in complying with federal laws and regulations on its programs, and a clean opinion in terms of compliance with the state of Oregon financial related laws. So basically, it was a good year in terms of the opinions that were earned. We'd like to thank the staff for their participation. We'd like to thank the board for the opportunity to present the audit report and to serve the college. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your report. Are there questions for Mr. Coons and Mr. Bourne? Rosie?
Just, are we required to pass a motion to accept the audit?
I am not sure about that. Do we need to do that?
I think we have in the past.
No,
Rosie, Marge?
So originally, we were not 100% sure we were going to get it back. We knew part of it, but this was a unique year because the Federal CARES Act. However, our firm was just so wonderful in getting it to us tonight that if you are comfortable, you can vote on it tonight.
Well, I would like to make that motion that we accept the audit.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Rosie, did you want to speak to your motion?
Well, I would like to say congratulations to Marty and all of the team who work on the college's finances. They are extraordinarily complicated, and I have much admiration for all of our team, and I intend to vote in favor of accepting this audit with much appreciation.
Thank you. Okay, Angela.
Thank you. I had thought that the agenda said we would be reviewing it for acceptance in our next meeting, and that in this meeting, we would begin discussion without an action item. I'm delighted that it's a clean opinion. Obviously, our finance team and the entire college works incredibly well at putting these together, but I haven't actually had a chance to read it, so I prefer to wait. Thank you.
Matt?
Yeah, I concur with Angela. And I don't see any reason why it's ever so pressing to approve this tonight, and would be more comfortable waiting to the February meeting. My question is in regards to, and thank you, by the way, for the clean report, and thank you for the professionalism. My entire time on the board, we've used Kenneth Coons and Company, so I appreciate your service to the college. But is it not a best practice to change independent auditors for an institution of this size every 2 to 3 years or 5 to 6 years? And I think we've used Kenneth Coons for at least a decade, if not 15 years. I appreciate the service. I welcome the diligent work, but I'm wondering about adhering to best practices and standards.
Is there someone who would like to answer that?
This is Marty Hannafin speaking.
Yes.
I didn't know if Ken wished to respond in his understanding of the industry. I will say, to Matt's point, that is correct. We will be putting out an RFP to solicit firms, of which Coons and Company may wish to again submit their interest. But again, I agree that I think it's always good to put out bids and have different firms, and even if you have the same firm, to have different members of such firm looking at your books every several years. I have not been at the college long enough to know if Ken, have you had that internal practice of having different people here at different times through the years?
Yes, we have. We've rotated auditors over the years to give a different look to the college. One of the things that has been shown to happen is that in the first 2 years of a change in auditors, those are the times when it is most likely to have an audit failure in terms of the audit firm not being familiar, not knowing where to look to see what might be right and what's wrong. And those are the cases where the audit firm itself, statistically, where the failures normally happen in audit engagements themselves. There are positive aspects to retaining the same auditor in terms of service to the firm, the business in terms of being able to provide guidance and information and assistance in areas where some specialization is needed. So that's basically my comment on auditing.
Okay, so I am going to accept responsibility for the confusion around tonight's agenda item. I had actually been clicked on the next section of the agenda, which clearly was labeled action. And so I hear that we have a lot of information to read through, and wondering if we want to take a vote on this decision, or if somebody might want to withdraw the motion to approve it tonight. Okay.
Well, that would be me, and
Yes.
I don't think a 30-day delay is going to substantively change the outcome of this audit. I do anticipate benefiting from Angela's particular and unique expertise in terms of the questions she might pose at a subsequent meeting. But the audit is the audit. It's a great audit, and I'm prepared to vote on it.
Okay. Angela and then Matt.
Is it, and this is part of me not being as familiar as I should be with Robert's Rules of Order. Could I make a motion to delay the motion?
So I believe we would have to vote on the motion that is on the table. Michael Blades, you want to give me some direction on that?
You could actually make a motion to table the motion.
And that requires a second and a 2/3 vote.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Angela?
I would like to move that we table the motion until next meeting.
Second.
I guess I said something conditional. I move that we table the motion until the next meeting.
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Okay. Any discussion?
It's a non-debatable motion, Madam Chair.
Oh, thank you. Okay. I know we had this in the last meeting and I took the time to look it over, so I'll get it right the next time. So Donna, you want to call the roll?
Sure.
And point of information, I believe a motion to table just requires a majority. It doesn't require 2/3.
Michael?
I believe it's 2/3, but I will look it up before you're done with your vote.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, and I'll pull out my quick guide too and go ahead and call the roll.
Okay, great. Melanie Munzer,
Aye.
Mike Eyster,
Aye.
Matt Keating,
Aye.
Lisa Fragola,
Aye.
Rosie Pryor,
No.
Angela Van Kraus,
Aye.
Chelsea Jennings,
Aye.
I believe the motion carries. Mike, did you have a chance to look that up?
Yes, and I do believe it takes 2/3.
Okay, thank you.
I will double check that and put it in the chat, but
Okay, I know we
got 2/3 anyway.
I know yes, it did. And I know we emailed about that previously, and I had looked it up as well at that time. So, but if you could confirm it, that would be great. All right. So it sounds like I also would like to acknowledge the accolades of this audit, and that sounds like the staff has worked very hard to make sure that everything was in place. And I'm assuming that if we have questions in the future, that we would ask them to our staff, or would we need for Mr. Coons and Mr. Bourne to return?
We previously discussed having them come back when, as the president mentioned, we weren't sure the report would be fully done in its entirety. So we can have them both present for questions at the February meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Marty. All right.
Sure.
Thank you both very much for being here this evening.
Thank you for the opportunity to present the report, and thank you for the opportunity to serve you.
Yes, thank you very much.
All right, so I'm going to move on to our next agenda item, which is the CMGC method for Building 19 seismic project and the new health professions building. So LCC is requesting to use the construction manager general contractor contracting method for these buildings. And I'm wondering, Marty, if we could just have a quick overview, and then I'll be looking for a motion on whether or not we would like to approve that.
Thank you very much. I believe we have with us Jennifer and even Tom Goodhue, and I'm going to ask, probably Tom will be the one to walk us through, unless Jennifer, you and he have spoken, but just to overview the projects and the benefits and the determination as to why the CMGC is sought by the college, that'd be very helpful.
Okay. We are looking at using the CMGC process as opposed to a traditional design bid build process. The advantage for both of these projects of getting a general contractor on board early allows that contracting team to better understand the design through the process and give feedback to the design. For the Building 19, that seismic project, seismic retrofit, contractor will have to do a lot of detailed work of attaching to the existing structure, as well as lacing through the interior of the existing building and trying to limit impact to it. So having that contractor in, looking at means and methods of how they're going to construct it during the design team should help us save money. Also, we can do it on a tight time frame where they can line up specific contractors, particularly for the steel manufacturer fabrication that'll be involved in this, to set them up and expedite the process there. On the new health professions building, being a new building, again, having the contractor on board early in the process, they can give feedback on both cost as well as building systems that can be used, what the availability of materials is, and availability of trades as well out there to help address some of those things. So we're asking on both of these projects to bring them in, also help us guide our construction costs before we start construction. One of the risks of a hard bid project is that you design it, you put it out to bid, and in recent years, bids have come in quite high. So we end up redesigning things and coming back with it to a delay. So working with a CMGC, we should be able to reduce that risk.
Jennifer, did you want to add anything?
No, Tom covered it. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any questions from board members? I would like to say, having attended a presentation that both Tom and Jennifer provided for some of us, that I felt like there were a lot of benefits to be had from this process for the college. Are there any other questions? Do I have a motion?
I move that we grant an exemption from the competitive process for the new health professionals building and Building 19 seismic project, and authorize the CMGC alternative contracting method.
Second.
Thank you. Mike, did you want to speak to your motion?
I think I've mentioned before that I've had experience with CMGC. I think it's a very efficient, effective way to build buildings, and so I support it.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, we'll call the question. Donna?
Melanie Munzer,
Aye.
Angela Van Kraus,
Aye.
Mike Eyster,
Aye.
Matt Keating,
Aye.
Chelsea Jennings,
Aye.
Rosie Pryor,
Aye.
and Lisa Fragola.
Aye. So the motion carries. Looks like you have your CMGC process.
Thank you.
Yeah, I look forward to hearing more about it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and I do see that, Mike, thank you for following up on that. A motion to table requires only a majority, not a 2/3 vote. Go Matt Keating. It will also require a motion to remove it from the table at the next meeting, which will need a second. And it's not debatable, and it only requires a majority for approval. So we will leave it on the table until our next meeting, and then we'll take it off the table. So moving on to agenda item D, board position zone 1. Melanie Munzer, would you like to address this agenda item?
Yes, so as I mentioned at the retreat, I am going to have to step down from my board position due to accepting another job, which I still unfortunately can't provide details on just yet, but hopefully in the next few days. The new position does create some conflicts of interest, and it will take up all of my time. So I will not have any time to devote to the college, and the college really deserves to have a board member who is fully able to commit them full selves to this role, because it is really important. I will be stepping down effective basically after the board meeting today. So we'll just say 11:59 this evening, it will be effective. And I just did want to share a little tidbit. I have another fun tidbit I'll share at the end of the meeting, but this has meant a lot to me. This is an emotional day for all of us, but so if I start crying, you know, it is what it is. I just think back to the very first board meeting I attended, which had hours and hours of testimony because it was during the middle of budget season. And there were 111 people. I remember this very clearly because I wrote down something about everybody who came and talked to the board. And there were a lot of horrible things about that, right? We were cutting, I think, $10 million out of the budget. It's very overwhelming to have 111 people come and talk to you. But that meeting has stuck with me for these 4 years, and it had the impact it had on me, both as a board member and as a person, is going to last for a lifetime. Because what I took away from that was how committed everybody is to the college. The comments were often, you know, people talking about how they're struggling, what their programs meant to them, how it changed their lives. And it's the impact that Lane has on people is real. And these are hard jobs, both for the board members, for everybody who works at the college. And these are hard times. But I leave this position knowing that everybody here is fully committed to making Lane successful and to helping students. And I am so proud, I'm gonna start crying, to have been a part of this, even if it was only for a few years. And I deeply appreciate everything that everybody here has done in the time that I've been able to share with you. So I just wanted to leave it at that. And I appreciate everybody, so.
Thank you, Melanie. And as chair, I do accept your resignation and have deep appreciation and gratitude to you for all of your work and on the board and your advocacy for higher ed. And we will have some time at the end when we go to board reports for people who would like to appreciate Melanie. But right now as a board, we need to pass a motion declaring a vacancy in zone 1 and that we will be posting that vacancy. And our goal is to, in our next agenda item, to discuss the process, but all of the timelines that I have presented to the board involve the same posting date, which is tomorrow. So do I have a motion from a board member to declare the vacancy for Zone 1 and to post?
I move that we declare Zone 1 board seat vacant effective midnight tonight.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Mike, did you want to speak to your motion?
Well, I'll save that for my comments for Melanie afterwards.
Okay, all right. All right. If there's no objection, I'll call the roll. Donna?
Okay, Melanie Munzer,
I'm going to abstain.
Angela Van Kraus,
Aye.
Mike Eyster,
Aye.
Matt Keating.
Point of information, Donna and Chair Fragola. This is simply a motion declaring the seat vacant. This isn't looking at options 1, 2, or 3, correct?
That is correct.
Great. Aye.
Okay. Chelsea Jennings,
Aye.
Rosie Pryor,
Aye.
Lisa Fragola.
Aye. And this is when I'm sad that webinars don't have emojis. Okay, so thank you again for your service, Melanie, and we will move on to a discussion of the process for the board vacancy. And you have this in your agenda in the board packet. I did try to take into consideration all of the feedback that people expressed at our retreat last weekend. And so you have three different timelines here. And one of them is a bit shorter. So it's kind of like, we can call it the Three Bears timeline, right? We've got the shorter one, we've got the medium-sized one, and we've got the longer one. And Donna, I'm going to ask that if it's possible, you could share those on the screen for our visual humans.
This is Deborah. I can do that. Just one second.
Thank you very much, Deborah.
Great. Thank you, Deborah.
As I mentioned, all of the timelines involve posting tomorrow on January 21st. And the shorter timeline, and so you can see there's option 1, option 2, and option 3. So we have gone through the declaring a zone vacancy, and we're discussing the process now. So we'll post them. They all have the same posting date. The application deadline for the shorter one would be Wednesday, February 11th. The application deadline for the second option would be Monday, February 22nd. And the third option, the application deadline would be Tuesday, March 9th. And then each of those has an interview date, which fall on Saturdays. And we do have some alternative dates, so we don't need to base a decision on an option based on those Saturday dates, but those would allow the board the most time and the greatest flexibility to interview candidates. And then the appointments would be at, for the first option, at the Wednesday, February 17th board meeting, having the least amount of time that we would be without a full complement of board members. The second option would require us to gavel in and out of a quick board meeting at our work session in the first week of March. And the longest option would have us appointing or approving the appointment at Wednesday, March 17th, our board meeting in March. The deadline to file with the Lane County elections is March 9th. And to be clear, anybody we appoint they are filling the rest of Melanie's term, which expires at the end of June. And so they would need to run on the coming 2021 May election ballot in order to continue after June. So that, well, actually, sorry, the position would start July 1st. So if they wanted to continue after the appointment, they would start the elected position on July 1st. Okay. Any questions? Or why don't we start with any questions that people need clarification from, and then we can move into some more deliberations. Angela.
In deciding the options that we go with, is there a motion needed, or how do we sort of coalesce on a decision? What's the?
I think we will approve a process tonight. So we will probably ask for a motion. I will ask for a motion and we'll vote on it.
Is now an appropriate time to make a motion, or should I wait until you ask?
So I'm just wondering if anybody has any clarifying questions about these dates, and I'm also happy to answer questions after a motion is made as well. So if you have a motion, go ahead.
I move that we go with option 2 for the timeline for filling our board vacancy for Zone 1.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. And is everybody okay if we stop the share here? Is there any objection? Okay, great. All right. So we have a motion to use option 2, which is our medium timeline. Angela, did you want to speak to your motion?
I do. Thank you. So I like option 2 for a number of reasons. The first of which is that since whomever is appointed would need to file for the seat by March 9, having appointed them before that gives them time to actually make that filing. Excuse me. I also, in looking at page 2 with the Zone 1 Budget Committee appointment, I think that option 2 allows appropriate timing for that to happen, for the new board member to recommend someone to the board for approval. And then perhaps the first thing I should have said is the application deadline being Monday, February 22nd gives us a full month of posting, which I feel is an appropriate length. And so option 2 feels to me like it makes the most sense with our competing priorities and timelines, while also giving ample time for candidates to apply.
Thank you. I have Matt Keating next.
Thanks. I would submit respectfully that any option other than adhering to the ORS established dates does small d democracy a disservice. Making an appointment so close to the filing deadline of an election without using the filing deadline of the election, one could argue, is very McConnell-esque. And what is an extra 20 days or an extra week? I would suggest, and colleagues embrace that extra time to use it to most widely advertise not just this seat, but any other seats that are up in the 2021 special election, and utilize that existing deadline and date. Why? In 2017, when our most esteemed colleague, who's leaving us for greener pastures, and I'll reserve my kudos and accolades for Melanie to the end of the meeting, but a most qualified candidate, Melanie Munzer, filed to run for her zone on within 24 hours of the filing deadline. And there was a great candidate who had already filed, Sally Wants, who was recently successful in her municipal election in Florence, a candidate that gained a lot of attraction from fellow board members, including myself, who were excited to see Sally step up. If this board would have prematurely appointed Sally and Melanie Munzer had filed after Sally had already been appointed, we would have been missing out on the golden opportunity to have someone with Department of Education experience serve as our colleague. I think it is inappropriate to go with any option other than option 3 that very firmly connects our deadline with ORS deadlines. I will be voting either to voting no on either option 1 or 2, or if appropriate, amending the motion to insert 3 instead of 2. 3 is the only option for small d democracy's sake.
Does anybody, any other board members have input on this? Mike?
I prefer option 2, and I'm not concerned that if we use option 2 that we're going to miss any huge opportunities or make a huge mistake or violate any vitally important democratic principle. I think option 2 makes the most sense. That's the one I'm going to support.
Point of inquiry, Madam Chair.
Yes.
A question for my colleagues. Do we want this board member who's going to serve in this capacity to serve only through the election or serve for the next 4 years and run for the seat? And it's somewhat rhetorical. I'd maybe just think about it, because if it's to actually run for the seat, I would strongly suggest that we would adhere to the existing timelines as established by ORS.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other, Chelsea.
Thank you. I no longer seem to have the digital hand raise feature, and I've tried to Google why I don't, and my apologies. Thank you for recognizing my physical hand. I think that option 2 is a very valid option, and I especially appreciate Angela's thinking around how that also relates to our budget committee appointments and the timeline centered around that. And I think that that's important to look at as well. But I am personally most in favor of option 3. And I'm looking at it with the lens of inclusivity and equity in this case. In my experience with especially first-time candidates who might be running who are not necessarily heavily involved with, I'll say politics with a capital P here, but are maybe heavily involved in their community. And also, with potential candidates who might be coming from a marginalized community, whether that's a person of color or, women typically. A lot of times it takes quite a bit of time in order for that individual to assess whether this is something that they can take on. Running for office or even serving with an appointment takes a great deal of time and effort, and anyone's willingness to run or serve is I deeply respect. But I think that, the way that I'm looking at it here is that while I 100% respect my colleagues in terms of, us wanting to have a full board complement as soon as possible. I think that that's a very valid thing. To me, the way I'm looking at this is the difference between, if I'm looking at option 2 and option 3, when we would approve an appointment, there's a difference here of 2 weeks, which to me in the grand scheme of things is not that long. I know it can feel like a long time, but in terms of thinking about giving everyone the most equitable opportunity to file for this seat, I think that I would wait several more weeks if it meant that we were looking at a more equitable process in terms of allowing everyone to be able to file for this. And so that's kind of the perspective and lens that I am looking at this from. But I in no way would ever compare any of my colleagues to Mitch McConnell whatsoever. And I think, frankly, that's extremely insulting.
Rosie.
Call the question.
Okay, so calling the question, I believe needs a second and also a vote. So Michael Blade, would you like to clarify that for me, please?
That's correct.
Okay.
I'll second.
Great. Okay. So we're voting on whether or not to call the question. We're not voting on the motion. And it's not debatable. Am I correct? Michael Blade?
Correct.
Thank you. So we're voting on whether or not to call the question. We're not voting on the motion. So Rosie, can you call the roll, please?
You're talking to me, right?
Yeah, sorry, Donna.
Okay, that's okay. Yeah, okay. Melanie Munzer.
Aye.
Angela Van Kraus.
Aye.
Mike Eyster.
Aye.
Matt Keating.
Aye.
Chelsea Jennings.
Aye.
Rosie Pryor.
Aye.
Lisa Fragola.
Aye. Okay, now the question has been called. That's passed. So we will vote on the motion by Angela to use the timeline of option 2.
Okay. Melanie Munzer.
No.
Angela Van Kraus.
Aye.
Mike Eyster.
Aye.
Matt Keating.
No.
Chelsea Jennings.
No.
Rosie Pryor.
Aye.
Lisa Fragola.
Aye. What was the count on that, Donna?
Let's see. Mike, Lisa, Rosie, Angela. So 4-3.
So 4 and it passes. So we've just approved the timeline for option 2, which would have us appointing at the work session in March, and would have it posted until, let me look at all my notes here because it's not up there any longer. February 22nd. So that would put us also having to gavel in and gavel out at the work session. So yes, Matt.
Well, it seems moot, but I was going to move to amend option 2 to option 3.
I do agree with you. I think it's mute at this point.
Okay.
And so the only other things that we need to decide regarding that is that in terms of the process, we typically have had a CV and a letter of interest required during the application process. When the appointment process occurred for Zone 7, we also included 3 written questions with that application. And when we did the application process for Zone 5, we did not include written questions for that application process. We just asked one question at the first round of interviews and a multitude of questions at the second round of interviews. And so I do think that I would like to suggest that we do include some written questions in our application process. The one preliminary question that has often been asked is, why do you feel you are the best applicant to serve the community through your appointment to the LCC Board of Education? And the written questions that we asked people to describe their policy board experience, describing their understanding of the nature of equity and access in LCC's mission, and your perception of the board's role in these, and as well as basically a detailed question around the responsibilities of attendance, retreats, and those types of responsibilities, and if you are able to meet those. And so the reason I am asking the board about including questions in the application process is because we would like to post tomorrow. And so I'm interested in hearing what people think about this. Angela?
Thank you. I really like the idea of giving questions and giving questions in advance, but I think I would prefer not to have them be a part of the application. I think I would rather give them in advance and sort of give notice to applicants that those questions would be asked at the board meeting, because I think that sort of getting together all of the materials for the application is somewhat time consuming, and I just want to make sure that we're not sort of preventing people from applying based on overwhelming paperwork.
Chelsea?
Thank you. My apologies, Chair. Could you please repeat the change that you're proposing in terms of questions? If I understood you correctly, you're suggesting that, because originally we did not ask a suite of questions during the initial application process. And if I heard you correctly, your suggestion is to add a suite of questions to the application process?
So when we interviewed for Zone 7, there were 3 questions that were part of the application process, 2 rounds of interviews. The first interview is the one big question, and then the second interview, there were 15 questions that were asked. When we appointed for Zone 5, there were no written questions in the application process. The one big question in the first interview, and then I think about 10 questions in the second round of interviews. So there were 2 processes that have been used for the previous 2 appointments, and the only difference is whether or not to use written questions in the process. And so I would like to see us to make that decision for the posting tomorrow, and then I think we can make some decisions about the interview process based after we get that piece going.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
It did, yes,
Okay,
thank
great.
you. And I'll just say that I agree with my colleague Angela that I think I would prefer to not have questions asked in the application process. But if other colleagues felt strongly that we did, I would ask that there be a limit to maybe 1 or 2 short answer. Just keep it minimal in that sense.
Okay. Rosie and then Matt.
Thank you. I'm not seeing in this timeline an option for multiple interviews. I only see one date for interview and select. So shall I assume from that that's the intention, that we would interview, and upon completing one interview, we would select?
So at this point, we are intending on one interview. I have heard from Donna that based on past history that this zone does not tend to have the high number of applicants that the at-large seat and Zone 5 tend to have. So I do think we would be able to come to a decision in one round of interviews. If we did need to narrow it down, we would have the work session to also be able to do that.
I really support the one interview and select, because if we are to encourage candidates from Florence itself to participate in the process, I think expecting individuals to, well, I guess they're not physically coming somewhere, but that was a concern that was on my mind, that I wouldn't want to expect people to travel unnecessarily. So.
Okay. So I don't feel like we need a motion. I just did want to get some clarity on the fact that we have used two different procedures for the last two appointments. And so if people are, if board members are comfortable with not including written questions, we'll use the same approach that we used in the appointment process for Zone 5, which was our most recent appointment process, which only required a letter of interest and CV. And so, Matt?
Yeah, I appreciate you pointing out that there's often few candidates that step up for this particular zone, and as recognized by our recent extension of the Bond Oversight Committee for Florence, it was to attract attention from this particular zone, and had to extend in order to do so. So I would just ask colleagues to be flexible. Though I was in the minority of the last vote, I will support it. I'll support the majority's opinion, of course. But if there is a dearth of candidates that have submitted their intent to serve, I think we should, for democracy's sake, consider at that point extending the deadline like we just did with the Bond Oversight Committee, in order to, as Chelsea pointed out so eloquently, ensure for inclusivity reasons that we have the most diverse array of applicants. Please don't infer that I'm speaking for you, Chelsea. I want to make it really clear. I concur and I agree with your statements and I applaud them. And so, we have these dates that they're not cemented in stone. If for some reason there's one or two applicants, please, let's be flexible, colleagues, when we're advertising this position wide and far.
I think that probably the second most common word in the last year after pandemic has been a flexible mindset. So I think we all recognize the validity of having a flexible mindset. With no objection, I'd like to suggest that we only use a letter of interest and a CV moving forward for the application process. And in terms of, we do have some questions that we have from previous appointment processes, and I'm wondering if we might set up an ad hoc committee to solidify the questions that we would want to use for the interview. I'm also happy to work on that, but is there anyone else who's interested in working on that with me? I see Rosie.
I'm not volunteering.
No,
okay,
I would
Rosie.
like to speak.
Yes, please.
I'm confused about why the questions we would have used last time wouldn't work just fine this time. And I would like parenthetically for us to standardize this process. And not keep redesigning it every time this happens.
I'm working towards that. Yes. So in answer to your question, there are some questions in the Zone 5 that refer to the bond campaign. And so I'm assuming we wouldn't use that, right? But there were different questions used in the appointment process for Zone 7 and for Zone 5. And so we can use the most recent ones if that's the board's desire. And I can send those out to people, but we can't deliberate by email. So I'm just wondering about how to approach this. Mike.
I'm perfectly comfortable with you looking at the last 2 or 3 selection processes and identifying the questions that we'll use in this process. I think you can do that just fine.
Okay. If there's no objection to Chelsea.
I would just say I'd be happy to be someone if you need someone to bounce ideas off of. I'm happy to collaborate on that if you need someone to
That
run
would be
anything
great.
by.
I would greatly appreciate that. Okay. All right. So I will work on bringing that to our process. And at this time, I believe we do have a timeline for the vacancy process. Donna, are you clear on what we want to post tomorrow?
Yes, but I will probably run it by you before we send it out.
Okay, great. Happy to do that. All right, I'm gonna move us on to our.
So Lisa, I'm not seeing a raised hand option on my screen. I'm not sure.
And just go ahead and raise your physical hand. So as a co-host, I don't see the same thing that you all see, and it has something to do with a recent update from.
Okay. Well, one of the things that that I think we want to be mindful of is in the past, we have asked, this is a public process. We've asked candidates who are not being interviewed to wait in the lobby, although they could have come in if they wanted to. If we're doing this virtually, it's almost certain that the second, third, and fourth candidates are going to hear the folks before them. I just wanted to put that out on the table. I don't know if there's any way to ameliorate the impact of that other than to be aware of it.
So we can think about that and address it through a technological approach. Thank you for highlighting that. I mean, we don't have to stream it. It can just be a webinar that someone would attend. And then we can,
public.
That is still public. And, but I'll take that up with Marge and we'll do our best to address that. Thank you. Okay, so I would like to move us on to our next agenda item, which is the COVID-19, our COVID-19 reopening safely update. Paul, welcome.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair Fragola. Good evening, everybody. I would like to report on changes to the reopening plans that we've had. Currently, since our last board meeting, there have been no changes to the institution reopening plan. We did have one submission yesterday. We reviewed it in the reopening advisory team for a department plan for some in-person activity. This is with Lane County Sheriff's Office Reserve Academy. We have had about a 15-year association with them and offering courses for the academy and also providing a location for training. So that is currently under review by Cabinet, and I anticipate that that will be approved shortly. Some current stats as far as how the virus is affecting our campus community. We currently have 2 students that are isolating at home after COVID, testing positive for COVID-19. That brings to date 45 employees and students that have tested positive, and of those 45, 12 of them have been in person. I did include in your board packet some information about the Lane County Regional COVID-19 Vaccination Collaborative. Lane Community College is part of that collaborative, along with the University of Oregon, Lane County Public Health, the local area hospitals and other institutions, basically working together and coordinating our vaccination efforts to meet the goals put out by the governor for 12,000 doses administered per day. And the state of Oregon is on track to deliver that and is currently delivering that, and will be partnering with those organizations in mass vaccination clinics throughout Lane County. And in fact, there's a good likelihood that Lane Community College, because of its location and the large parking lots, would serve as a drive-through mass clinic at some point in the future. So that's my updates. I anticipate we'll probably have some more activity now and plans for spring, and I'll be able to report on those at a subsequent meeting.
Thank you, Paul. Are there any questions for Paul? I'm looking for those real hands now because it sounded like the digital one's not accessible. Either works though, because Angela's got hers. All right, so it seems like there's no questions for Paul. Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, thank you all.
All right, I'm going to move us on to our next agenda item, which is resolution number 652 in support for community college employees inclusion in Oregon's priority vaccination group 1B. And Matt.
Move approval, resolution to include community college employees in Oregon Vaccination Group 1B.
Second.
Okay, we moved fast on that one. Okay, Melanie.
I just wanted to make a minor amendment to it. It doesn't change the meaning at all. I think that we just got a little messy in how we were referring to different employee groups. Throughout, we use terms inconsistently. And so I would suggest that we use community college employee as the consistent term throughout the resolution. We go back and forth between employee or community college faculty and staff or community college faculty and classified staff. So I would just recommend for consistency that we just say community college employee throughout the document.
Okay, so I believe at this point, since we do have a motion, that would be an amendment. Am I correct about that? I'm having a hard time with my Robert's rules tonight. So there's a, go ahead, Michael.
Yes, that's true. And so the amendment needs a second. There could be discussion and you have to vote on the amendment and then it goes back to the,
Okay,
then
great.
you have to
Thank
vote
you.
on the original motion as amended.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to amend to use consistent language through the resolution. Melanie, you did kind of speak to your motion. Your amendment, did you want to say anything else?
Nope, I think I covered it.
Okay, Matt.
Thank you. I agree that some consistency would be welcome, but I don't want to do it by removing language, especially language that calls out our classified union. I would like to maintain the word classified and insert that in front of the word staff every time for consistency reasons. And if I'm understanding the motion correctly, you're just asking for consistency, correct?
Speak to that.
Are you addressing that to Melanie or to me?
I'm addressing the motion maker.
Motion maker. Okay, Melanie?
I thought I just heard consistency. I just want to ask you for clarification.
Well, it is, but it's also, I think it loses something when we are just calling out faculty and classified staff, because there are managers, I think, too, that would fall under the need to get to fall in this category for vaccination. So I think it would be, I think, too messy to consistently say faculty, classified staff, and managers. So if you just say employees, I think it reads a little bit better. Otherwise, I would want to call out all three groups, and I think that's a little challenging. And students, workers as well. So the employees covers kind of that whole array.
Is there anyone else who wants to speak to the amendment? Matt.
Thanks. I appreciate the clarification. I disagree with the assessment. I think that it is a stronger statement to highlight our labor partners on campus, and I would encourage colleagues to vote no on the amendment and yes on the resolution, but I would welcome any other amendments to specify classified where the word staff simply exists. I intentionally inserted the word classified for a reason, that our faculty and our classified members should know that this board has their back when it comes to advocating for the safety and welfare and advocating for them to be in a priority cohort to receive vaccinations. I think it's entirely appropriate, and I discourage removing the word classified.
So I might have a friendly amendment that I could make to the amendment, Melanie. I do notice through the majority of the document that it says community college employees or faculty and staff. The only place where it says classified staff is the first, therefore be it resolved. And we could add language there that would say community college faculty, classified staff, and all college employees, just to make it clear that we are including all college employees. And I think that would ensure that we are covering all employees at the college. Melanie, so I'm offering a friendly amendment.
I'm okay with a friendly amendment, except it also does say classified staff in the last whereas. So we would have to make that same edit, I think, there as well.
Okay.
But I'm okay with that.
So do we need to vote on a friendly amendment?
Yes.
Okay, so I need a second.
Second.
Okay, great. So I believe I already spoke to my motion. Rosie?
So I'll be honest and say I'm a little fuzzy now about
Yes.
what we're voting on. I agreed with Melanie's original recommendation that we streamline the language.
Mm-hmm.
I do not agree with this friendly amendment. So now I'm obligated to vote against what I hope is Melanie's recommendation to streamline the language.
No, you would just vote against the friendly amendment. So right now we're going to vote on the friendly amendment, which is to leave the language as is, but to add all employees in 2 spots, the last whereas and the first therefore be it resolved. And if that is voted down, then Melanie's amendment would remain and we would vote on that.
Madam Chair, I don't know if that's accurate. I think that this friendly amendment takes place of the amendment. If I could get clarification from
And if
Michael.
it doesn't pass, then we vote on the original amendment, correct?
Right. We have one vote on, it's the amendment vote. If it doesn't pass, then it just goes back to the original amendment. That's how I understand. Excuse me, the original motion, not the original amendment.
Michael Blades, you want to weigh in on that?
So you're voting on the friendly amendment.
Mm-hmm.
If that does not pass, then it goes back to Melanie's original amendment,
Mm-hmm.
and you vote on that. And if it doesn't pass, it goes back to the original motion to pass the resolution as is. If the friendly amendment passes, then you're just voting on the well, if the friendly amendment passes, then you've got something. If the friendly amendment doesn't pass and you vote on Melanie's original amendment and it passes, then you're done. But if it doesn't pass, then it goes back to the original resolution. That clear as mud for you?
Yes, and I think that's what I said. So so right now we're voting on the friendly amendment. Donna, can we call the roll for that, please?
Okay, Melanie Munzer,
Aye.
Angela Van Kraus,
Aye.
Mike Eyster,
No.
Matt Keating,
Aye.
Chelsea Jennings,
Aye.
Rosie Pryor,
No.
Lisa Fragola,
Aye. Okay, so the friendly amendment passes, which means the original amendment was modified to the friendly amendment, which means we're done with the amendment. I will not try to say that 3 times fast. So I also have an amendment, and I apologize to my board colleagues. We did move quickly on this item in order to get it to tonight's board meeting for a variety of reasons. I feel it's very timely. But there was some new information that came that I became aware of today. And that information is that that K-12 educators actually have a different qualification than the 1B, that they actually come before the 1B, and that when we say at the same as K-12 educators in the last further it be resolved, it is actually a little bit it's a little bit misconstrued. It would be with greater clarity that we simply ask that the resolution simply says college employees in the Oregon vaccination priority group 1B, and we would be taking out same as K-12 educators. I'm looking at the further be it resolved, and I could actually probably share my screen now that I realize that I can do that as well. Can everybody see that? Thank you, Chelsea. So I'm talking about this section right here, further be it resolved. So apparently in Oregon, the governor created a special category for K-12 educators, but the goal is to make community college employees part of the Oregon vaccination priority group 1B. They currently have no priority group. And so it would be to take out just this language comparing them to K-12 educators, because it's a little bit misconstrued. It would make it more focused or to just say Oregon vaccination priority group B. And there is a second place in the document where that happens as well, where I would also like to amend that we remove the reference to category as K-12. K-12 and early childhood educators are actually in an earlier classification, even though they are classified in the Center for Disease Control. So I just believe it brings greater clarity. I need a second for that amendment.
I can second it, but I'm the original motion maker. I don't know if that's appropriate.
Okay. And thank you. And seconded by Chelsea, in case Matt can't do that. I believe I've spoken to my motion. And I see Angela's hand.
Lisa, I think there's actually a third reference to K-12 educators also. Did you, I thought I heard you say 2 references in the motion.
So I do see the second K-12 educators, but that is not a reference in relationship to the category 1B. So that was the reason why I didn't ask to strike it, but if for consistency, that would be fine. Does that answer your question?
Well, so the 4th whereas and the 5th whereas and the second and the further be it resolved, I feel like they all say something about alongside or in the same category as K-12 educators.
So you're talking about here, 20 other states?
20 other states. Thank you.
Mhm. So it would be here. And so the only reason why there's not a reference to the 1B, just that it references what other states have done.
Yeah, thank you. I was misreading that section. Thank you for the correcting me.
Anybody else? All right, so we have an amendment. Can we call the roll on the amendment, please?
Sure.
Is everybody clear on the amendment?
For me?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Donna.
Okay. Melanie Munzer,
Aye.
Mike Eyster,
Aye.
Matt Keating,
Aye.
Lisa Fragola,
Aye.
Rosie Pryor,
Aye.
Angela Van Kraus,
Aye.
Chelsea Jennings,
Aye.
Is that all of us? Okay, so that passes. I feel like did I get called? I didn't get called, Donna.
Okay. Yeah, I called them a little out of order than what I usually do.
I
Thought I did. Okay, great. Thanks.
Sorry, I thought it was me, and it's definitely been a long day. So thank you for your patience, everybody. That passes. That was the amendment. Is there any further discussion on the resolution? If not, we can call the roll on resolution 652 to support community college employees' inclusion in Oregon's priority vaccination group 1B, all community college employees at Lane Community College. Okay, Donna, you want to call the roll?
Okay, here we go. Melanie Munzer,
Melanie?
Aye. Sorry, I must not have unmuted. Aye.
Angela Van Kraus,
Aye.
Mike Eyster,
Aye.
Matt Keating,
Aye.
Chelsea Jennings,
Aye.
Rosie Pryor,
Aye.
Lisa Fragola.
Aye. Thank you. I want to thank Melanie and Matt for supporting that effort on that resolution. And also, as the chair, would hope to share that with the relevant decision makers as it is declared in the resolution. So I'm going to move us on to our long-term budget forecast with Marty and Zach.
Great. Good evening. Thank you. In your packet, you have a long-term forecast, general fund only. Thinking back to the retreat we had, this is Fund 1. This is a snapshot of Fund 1. And I will kick it over to Zach to walk us through. And my hope is that I know we have limited time, so let's hope we have the majority of the time for questions you may have. Zach, if you're there, take it away.
I'm here. Thanks, Marty. Yeah, so I just want to take this time to say that I've repurposed, reformatted, and updated the long-range forecast tool that was developed by the college's Finance Council for the 2017 to 2022 long-range financial plan. As Marty said, it's a general fund summary that shows 3 years of prior year actuals. And if we need it up on the screen, I'll ask Brett to share. I was just too excited to get started. So there's 3 years of prior year actuals. The column highlighted in light orange is the 2021 forecast for the general fund, which was presented to the board in December. The figures included then anything after that are forecasts for years 22 through 25, FY25. The key revenue assumptions and the key expenditure assumptions are listed at the bottom, but just as a quick overview, this assumes no tuition rate adjustment, that the COVID emergency $5 fee per credit ends at the end of this year, The enrollment assumption is down 5% for FY22 from where we estimate we'll finish this year. That then changes a bit in 23, where it comes back up 5% to being even where we think we'll end this year. So a little bit of volatility in next year, given the ongoing pandemic, a little bit of rebound after that in the year after, and then slight growth in the out years. The enrollment assumption was guided by LCC enrollment data, as well as reports from the National Student Clearinghouse Research Center. As we know, with literature that's coming out on community college enrollments during the pandemic, is that the enrollment patterns we're seeing are not following prior patterns that the college experienced in the last recession, as well as community college experienced in the last recession. The revenue assumptions also continue to see a trend of increase in local property taxes, and there's a small change in the percentage of the Community College Support Fund allocated to LCC. The funding formula that the Community College Support Fund is based on takes in a 3-year weighted average of reimbursable FTE, and then it also factors in property taxes collected. The slight increase that the projection shows, or the forecast shows, is in line with some tools that we're getting from the PEC, showing a marginal increase in LCC's share of the Community College Support Fund. As we move forward and start to recover and move towards recovery, there is normalization of kind of the other revenue sources that make up the general fund. And switching to the expenditure side, we're forecasting an increase in M&S expenditures for next year compared to where we are right now, because that assumes that we will be back on campus at some point during the next academic year. And with that, we're assuming an increase in M&S expenses such as utilities with having people on campus. As you also can see from this is forecasting significant deficits in the future years. And to highlight that in years FY24 and 25, the college managed PERS reserve in Fund 9, only if we continue to use it as the rate that we're using it, only 50% of it will be available in FY24, which means then the reserve is exhausted going into FY25, therefore showing why there are increases in the OP rate change and the second line to the bottom in the key expenditure assumptions. The average contracted personnel expenditure changes. Some of this information we're aware of given contractual obligations in moving forward. Others we've included placeholders, not only for compensation changes, but also for growth in the number of positions that are on campus. Again, the assumption is that once we return fully to campus, we will start to refill positions and add in areas, needed areas that we might not necessarily need at the moment in a remote environment. I'm available, Marty and I are available for questions.
Okay, so can I ask, do board members have, okay, I was wondering if we could stop the share and if board members had that available on another screen. Questions from the board? I'm not seeing any type of hand. Mike?
Well, I don't know if I have my question is, that looks like a gigantic mess and we need to figure out a strategy. I mean, it's kind of a comment, I think. Comments
are equally welcome. I think my brain is kind of like, I don't even know. Yeah. Rosie.
I was so focused on using my electronic hand raising that I didn't remember to unmute. Sorry. Thank you very much for calling on me. I think this is probably the most useful information, budget information we've received in all the years I've been on the board at Lane Community College. And obviously it's distressing. There are several takeaways for me in looking at this information. One is that the tuition rate is held constant across the next 5 years. Obviously, that's not realistic. While I don't support a tuition increase during a period of enrollment decline, at whatever point we have empirical evidence that enrollment may be beginning to rebuild, that's the time to look at product pricing adjustments in my perspective. Having said that, when you look at this data, we can't realistically raise tuition high enough to cover the deficits that are projected over the next 5 years. And what that speaks to is a history of deficit spending. And so the plan that Mike alludes to, the strategy we're going to have to come up with is, how will this college finally and fundamentally adjust itself to fit the resource base that realistically exists for the college? There's a projection for some kind of return or modest growth in enrollment in a couple of years. And I would like to believe that we're going to experience that. And sadly, the last few years have been so chaotic that practically every projection our beleaguered finance staff and administration have tried to make with respect to enrollment growth has not materialized. In fact, the line just keeps going down. We are in an uncharted territory with respect to enrollment, because typically in a time like this, with an economy like this, we see a bolt upwards, but people either don't have the money, are afraid to come out of their homes, or both, or thirdly, they're not comfortable with the online paradigm. And so I feel the board, given our history and given these projections, needs to be careful about tuition increases going forward until we have some empirical data to prove that enrollment truly is beginning to turn a corner. So those are some of my takeaways. I think this is finally the agonizingly vivid picture that we have needed to see for several years. Thanks.
Melanie?
So I echo everything that Rosie just said. I'm very appreciative that this was brought forward. So even though I won't participate in future discussions, so that the board and the college can take this into consideration. It is hard to react to because the numbers are so extreme. The only question that I have right now is if, as the budget process ramps up for the year, is the budget development subcommittee also going to be looking at this as they're bringing the budget proposals forward, ultimately for the board to review? Is this going to be part of that consideration for them, or are they just going to look at the 1 year?
So far, we briefly discussed it today, but it wasn't the topic of the meeting. I'm also developing further kind of with prior years, the next year look in a little bit more detail. So getting, sharpening the pencil and really getting into the data. This was more built off the December forecast. So a little bit of things have changed since then, but we can bring that up so it's visible in those conversations. Marty and I participate in that group, as does Paul and Greg Holmes as well. So believe they're all on the call, so hearing that request.
I have myself in the queue, and so I have a couple of questions, and then I'll go back to Rosie. So I'm curious if this projection also holds the community college state fund level, or does it show any change in that? And I'm also curious what would be the impact of the federal dollars that we heard from in Marge's comments earlier. And I don't know if you can provide an answer to this tonight, but I believe in order for me to be able to think about this, I also, when we begin to look into a variety of solutions, because I believe we need to look at a variety of solutions, I need to understand the loss of revenue that occurs when we eliminate services that we provide, because anytime we eliminate a service, we also are eliminating revenue that comes into the college. So I need to understand that relationship as well. So maybe for the evening, if you could just comment on how the projections for the community college state fund and is shown in this, and what about the federal relief dollars?
So the answer is this was built to get into the packet prior to the federal dollars being released. So it does not include any of, as I've been calling it, the CARES Act 2.0. I haven't quite nailed the acronym yet. The Community College Support Fund holds steady from what we've been hearing for the next 2 years of the biennium. And then I assumed a small increase and then the out years 3 and 4. So Brett, you could pull the screen back up, the share back up. So right down in the state funding and the key revenue assumptions in the 2024-2025 assumed a small increase in the CCSF. If I had a crystal ball, I would hope that would be much higher than that, but I was taking a conservative approach in where we thought we'd be in the out years. In regards to closing services, if you're referring to the bookstore, food service, and the CML, since those were all housed in our enterprise fund, that is where the revenue went when we hosted them. Now that we are having outside vendors, the revenue for those are going to the general fund or the bookstore and food service.
Yeah, I guess when I used the word services, I meant any type of, if we're using a business model as, referenced in some earlier descriptions, then, I mean, when we're taught, the service that we provide is education, right? And so in terms of when we begin to talk about those impacts, then I also need to understand the loss of revenue.
Understood.
If I could, I'd like to offer just a little bit more on the federal funds. And thank you, Zach. This has been really helpful, as all your work always is. I just want to put out there what I've explained to the Budget Development Subcommittee when it comes to the, I like the CARES 2.0 because, like Zach, I haven't gotten all the R's and the C's and the S's and A's in my mind yet. But the caution I have there is first one of recognition, really, that the funds being given to us are to in recognition of what we've been through with the pandemic. And as Zach was just sort of describing, we've had impacts across our many different funds. Recalling our conversation on Saturday, we've had impacts from the virus that have hit all of our printing and graphic shop. In Fund 2, the printing orders have gone dramatically down. So that's been adding a deficit. So that's an impact. The Fund 6 programs, international, Titan Court, Before we suspended CML, the loss is there with all the cancellations and lost revenues. So when you think about this amount of money that we've all been eager to see confirmed, and it is wonderful, let's not forget to say it is wonderful, it's going to help us greatly. Once we help the students, we need to make sure we don't utilize all that money in structural supports for FY22 and ongoing operations, only because what happens when we think about FY23, which is why I appreciate the board's comment about, is BDS considering a long view? Because we do need to have that group look at a long view, or we at least need to make sure that the things we're using from the CARES 2.0 either go for one time, or, and this is where I've said previously, I could easily get behind, because I think it's going to be necessary for us to use at least a couple million. I'd like to stop it at 2.5 for now, if we can, in terms of helping bridge that FY22 deficit you're seeing right now. Because as Rosie's saying, this is going to be a difficult year for enrollment already. We have to be sensitive to the students and the pricing. It's going to be a hard slog to close a $6 million gap. I think we're going to have to consider our footprint in terms of which academic programs we offer. We have to look at our services ongoing. We have to look at using some of the federal funds, and that's still going to leave us with a couple $1 million of what do we do now type of moment. So just to put out there the federal funds, I really want to see us utilize them wisely. I want to make sure we don't come to rely upon them too greatly, because they are one time. Well, we don't know that, do we? Because 2.0, I don't envision we're going to be receiving more and more allocations like this. So that's a great question about the Fed funds, and I appreciate your interest in this.
Rosie.
Thank you. I really appreciated Melanie's question, and I want to build on what Marty just said. I think it is absolutely imperative that the Budget Development Subcommittee must work with this entire projection and not just a 1 or 2 year budget, because they've got to be able to see what has now been presented to the board, or there's going to be a fundamental disconnect between what the board has to consider and is brought forward by administration and what an unenlightened group would recommend. My question is, are both of our union leadership represented in that budget development subcommittee? And if not, can we please ensure that we do a briefing similar to this to the executive committees of both of our unions, because we're going to need to partner with them on next steps.
Yes, I don't know if Zach's, both union leaderships positions are on the BDS, and of course the BDS will bring its work forward to the College Council, where those members are also present. So thank you. Yes, and we're still somewhat early in our BDS process, and we are consistently bringing a long view, and I appreciate that, Rosie, because we really do need to be cognizant of what lies ahead as we try to solve the difficult FY22. Any solution we put in place has to be aware of FY23, 24, 25. So thank you for that.
Okay, do we have any other comments or questions from board members? Okay, I'm going to move us on to our next agenda item, not seeing any hands. We have a diversity council report. And I believe that we have Deontay and Deontay Carter. Sorry, Deontay Carter and Greg Evans. Welcome.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, board members, Madam Chair. I want to turn this over to Deontay, since he is the chair of the Diversity Council this year for 2020 and 2021. He has prepared the document that's in your packet. That's a report on what we have done as a council and what our current work plan is. So Deontay, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Hello, my name is Deontay Carter. For those who have not had the pleasure to meet me,
It is a pleasure to meet some of you all. Some are new faces to me, some are very familiar. I want to say Happy New Year to you all, starting off. 2021, we've learned, if anything, from 2020 that it is something that we will need to be adjusting to rapid changes constantly. So what we have developed in our 2019-2020 work plan was religious holiday advisory memo, advocacy communication, review of policies, planning affecting first-generation immigrants, inclusive calendar, which was a need to share out, researching basic needs, insecurities, real college survey that we had doled out to the students and staff, student non-discrimination policy, guiding principles, as well as an all access inclusive bathrooms policy development, and the non-discrimination policy, which is something that is still on our current work plan in 2021. And just to provide a little background of what the Diversity Council does, is what we do is we modify, sometimes remove, and add new policies to the institution. We are all inclusive, so the work that we do affects everyone, all walks of life. In regards to resolution number 646, for this current work plan, we really didn't have a lot of things planned for that resolution because already we do a lot of this work. But we see this as an opportunity for the board to share some of those prospects that they have in regards to this resolution at some of our future DC meetings. And as well, we would like to share the 2021 current year of what we are doing, which does align with the resolution, the climate survey engagement and discussion, review and input, the behavioral intervention, cultural competency and law enforcement involvement, student of concern and behavioral intervention, membership and charter review, the non-discrimination policy, which was a continuation from the 2020, and development of training around pronouns. So these are the new agenda items for our 2021 work plan this year. And I did have in here a listing of, in regards to resolution number 646, to support the Black Lives Matter movement. We did initially want the board to look into the historical budget deficit of the Black Student Union. But from my understanding and knowledge, that that has been rectified as of the last summer. And as a member of that union and as the chair of the diversity committee, we just look for the documentation to come forth and for our union to get those new numbers so that we can continue to put on these events like we've done, like Madam President had acknowledged in the beginning, where we had brought Dr. Robert Bullard on, and so on and so forth. You know, this is a very active union, not saying that it's more active than any other union on campus, but this has also been a problem, and it aligns with number 646. I will pass it back to Mr. Evans to fill in on some spaces where he can speak to. And if you all have any questions, we will humbly await. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Deontay. With regard to the BSU budget situation, he is correct. That has been resolved, and the deficit has been cleared and they're on a firm footing now. I think it's about $9,000 for their budget for this year. So they're doing their events. They're working very hard on a variety of different things, and I think that at least that affinity group is working at high gear. If you have any other questions about any of the issues or part of the plans that were brought forward tonight, myself and Deontay stand ready to answer them.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions from board members? I have a question. I'll put myself in the queue. I'm curious about the progress that has been made or the plans for the climate survey engagement.
Yeah, let me address that, Chair Fragler. We last year, toward the end of last year, we were in negotiations with a firm that had provided the same service to Clackamas Community College and Chemeketa. Those negotiations fell through basically because of the price that they were requesting. So we have another budget that we're working through, and we're also going back and looking at the development of. We already appointed one committee that will prepare the RFP, and another committee that will review the RFP, and then we will go forward with selecting the consultants and moving forward in the process. It's going to be a little bit behind, but I think that we will be able to achieve it by the end of the academic year.
So I guess I'm not so concerned about the where we're at with it. I had assumed we would be behind based on the being in the middle of a pandemic and making it more difficult to connect and to reach out to students. And so do you think that we will slow that process down to try to accommodate for there not being students on campus and trying to engage and connect with students in a digital environment?
I think that what we want to do is strategize and plan with whoever the consultant is that we select about outreach and connectivity. I know that it's tough in this environment. Not all students have access to full technology to be able to do their homework or engage their classwork, let alone responding to a survey. So we're gonna look at some innovative strategies to be able to do that, to be able to reach all of our students and get as much feedback as we possibly can. So that's kind of where it is right now.
Okay.
I have a few ideas about that outreach, but they're not fully formed, so I won't share them with you tonight.
Okay, and I'd also like to say I feel like I misspoke, and I'm imagining it wouldn't only be to students, but also to
staff as well.
Yeah, right. So I misspoke on that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments, Mike? Matt?
Thanks. Could you comment on the behavior or the student of concern behavioral intervention plan?
Yeah.
Greg, you want me to take that one?
You want to go ahead, Deontay? Go ahead.
Yes. So what we are trying to do, especially this year, is just mainly focus on research and data collection, not as much as policy. And with this, what we are trying to delve deep into is certain students of concern, meaning like certain students of color or demographics or religious backgrounds who may have some type of, let's say, mental breakdowns, and how, as an institution, we address and recourse with these students in these times, and potentially moving back to campus and having figures of authority, i.e. public safety, or even EPD, etc., that may come to campus, and how exactly these students can be affected. And we want to address that and find out more information about it, so that way we can, if the situation occurs, we can address it properly. I hope that answers your question or provides a little more clarity.
And in addition to that, we are currently working with Lisa Rupp and Carla Gary, who is an outside consultant. She spoke to us at our fall-in service a couple of years ago to design a new training for our public safety folks that is going to be focused more on de-escalation and be focused on trying to work with students and employees who may have some, mental challenges or substance issues that may need to be addressed. So we're working on that. I think we're going to get that rolling this term, and we'll come out with a brand spanking new public safety team that is well equipped to meet the needs of students and staff on campus.
Great. If I could follow up quickly, please, Madam Chair, if we have time.
Sure.
Thanks. I'm wondering how the events of January 6th might inform that conversation with Lisa Rupp and her team. When I read student of concern behavioral intervention, I didn't take it in the space that you took it, Deontay. I took it to mean that there are some real students of concern, as there have been in my history at Lane Community College, students that may show up with Confederate flags flying from their trucks. And so that's where my brain went immediately. What's the Diversity Council's approach to really drawing a line in the sand, and do you need this board's help in doing so to denounce white supremacy and hate and vitriol in all forms on campus?
Well,
thank you,
board member Keating. We, have in the last year, we put in place the bias policy. I just got finished up working with our staff on putting together the processes and procedures around that. And the policy is designed to meet the needs that we have in that area, and that gap between punitive action versus non-action in dealing with incidents of these kinds. And so the bias policy is designed to be an educational tool and not a punitive tool. And that I think will help move us forward in situations like that. So if somebody shows up on campus with a Confederate flag, we can have a conversation with them, and we can, suggest some educational opportunities to resolve the issues that brings about.
And I'd like to also add that with this bias policy and other discrimination or bias policies that may come from this council, or a collaborative effort done with this council, that's what we are here for. That's what we do on a regular day basis. And I mean, especially with the forever changing environment that we are currently moving through, these policies will need to be updated consistently and accurately to best help all staff, students, and public.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the report. And Deontay, did I hear you offer an invitation earlier on in your comments that board members are welcome to visit with the Diversity Council. I wasn't sure if that was an invitation that you were offering.
That is correct. That was an invitation.
Okay.
You all are more than welcome to attend our monthly meetings. We meet on the first Friday of every month. So please, bring your prospects, your ideas, or just if you want to listen in and see what we do, we'd like to have you there.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
hanging in here this evening. It's been a little bit longer of a meeting than we've had recently. All right, so I'm going to move us on to our reports, and we'll start with the ASLCC SG. Looking to see who.
Thank you.
Amber?
Hi.
Yeah, hi,
Yeah.
Amber.
Hello. Good evening, members of the board. President Hamilton. My name is Amber Coleman, she, her, hers. I am the current student body president here at LCC. I just have a few things to report on that we're working on this month. The student government is working at looking at the student activity fee committee, and we are trying to help empower the student activity fee committee to function better than it has since its inception. And we're going to do this by finding a way to integrate the SAFC into the Lane SGA. We're still waiting to find out the legality around our COPS policy and the ways that we can reform this. But as soon as we get hands on those documents, we're going to look at this more closely. But it is very clear that year to year, the SAFC needs more support than it's getting in order to function as it's intended. So we're hoping to bring it in with the student government and bring some more students to that committee. Also, we're currently hiring staff positions. We're not at full staff for the student government, and we have 2 open Senate seat positions we are also recruiting for. Lastly, we are still working on Union of Unions. Our goal is to have better connectivity between our diversity unions, similar to the model of the Council of Clubs. We want to use this for making connections between separate groups and increasing collective bargaining and negotiation power for students. And that is all I have for my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. We'll hear from LCCEF next. Frankie, are you here this evening?
I am.
Hi, Frankie.
Hi, Lisa. So I'll just go ahead and start. Hi, my name is Frankie Kokenor. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I want to apologize this evening for having a picture up as my bandwidth doesn't always support a video feed. I tend to cut out. So I'll go on with, at the end of the year 2020, we held elections. We elected 3 new officers and we appointed 1 new officer. And I'd like to introduce them. We have Colin Vurick. She's our grievance officer. Marlena Pearson, who served with the union before. She's our chief labor delegate. Brett Moody, our recording officer. And Sean Cox, our part-time employee, who's our officer at large. We'd also like to acknowledge the swearing in of President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. What a beautiful moment in history that was this morning. It was just wonderful. In light of Paul Charles' email we received today about program sustainability that was sent out, I would like to discuss layoffs. The classified bargaining unit has already been hit by a large number of layoffs in 2020, as you are all aware. And we know that when restructuring happens in departments, and departments are cut, we are going to be looking at even more layoffs. Last year, I mentioned that our unit is very tired of the college balancing the budget on the backs of the classified employees. The college has not lost funding that it expected to lose from the state and the federal government this year, but we were denied raises on the basis that losses can happen next year or the year after that. And many of our members are very frustrated when we keep hearing that. Also, we had a lot of our members retire early this year to help save jobs. And when we took 5 furlough days to also help with the budget. The classified staff has also been working from home and personally covering the expense of utilities, internet, phones. For some classified employees, they've gone out and they've purchased furniture and equipment. We have not pressed for reimbursement because we're worried if we do so, it could cause more layoffs. Earlier this year, administration said that they were going to cut 10 management positions, and we did see that they did let go quite quite a few managers, but then they also hired a few new managers. So then there was maybe only a loss of 2 to 3 management positions. Are there going to be reductions in managements or just classified this year? It seems the administration plans to scale down LCC operations, but it's the classified employees who are being reduced far more than any other employee group on campus. We are the lowest paid employees, so the savings from every job cut are much less than the savings that could be realized by cutting management positions. From 2015 to 2019, 13% of classified staff were cut, while only 3% of administrative staff. Then in 2020 alone, about 25% of classified employees were laid off, where the equivalent of administrative jobs being cut. The classified employees are asking for the college to flatten the management structure and to create an equitable classified to employee or to management ratio. The students' experience at Lane and their decision on whether or not to attend is formed largely by the interaction with classified employees. They have classified employees helping them from the start. They come up to us to enroll, figure out their schedule, assist them with classwork, clubs, student organizations, and when an emergency happens, when they're ill, and even when they're having a bad day, there's a classified employee there. We've even had classified custodial employees sitting and sympathizing with them as they cry about a class that they're afraid they might fail in. That one employee encouraging them somewhere along the way is sometimes all that keeps a student from dropping their classes. So tonight, as you listen to me, please remember that this college is strong because we offer so much, and it's strong in what we offer because there are classified employees that work so hard in the background in their departments to make a great experience for the students in every way possible.
Thank you. And next we have a report from LCC EA. Adrian?
Good evening. Thank you for your service on the board, and thank you, Melanie, for your time of service. We will certainly miss you. I'd like to share a few updates. First, regarding vaccines, LCCEA and OEA have been very actively engaged in advocating for the inclusion of all community college employees in Category 1B for prioritization consistent with CDC guidance. And we did hear at a meeting that I attended yesterday evening with Governor Kate Brown that she has said that higher ed will be included in 1B, which I think is really wonderful. We haven't seen that in writing yet. I was asked about that earlier today, but I do think it's really important that we ensure that we're working together to advocate on this. And I really greatly appreciate the resolution that you all passed today. Regarding the college budget, it's really wonderful that we finally have the actual figures from the federal relief bill and that we will receive $8.9 million from the federal government after reserving $1.5 million for students. We will have $7.4 million left for the institution. And I think that this ensures that LCC has the stability to navigate the remainder of the pandemic without involuntary layoffs of any employees, and ensures that LCC can fund our critical mission of academic and student services to meet student need, especially as we return to more face-to-face instruction and engage in workforce development for unemployed and dislocated workers. And I believe this to be the case even if we allocate across multiple years. There are numerous positives to the budget. I understand that you've reviewed the long-term financial forecast, but please remember that that only includes Fund 1. We have many other funds, and in fact, our budget is based on both Funds 1 and 9. So there are many other factors that impact our budget, and I would suggest that there are also many assumptions on which that long-term fiscal forecast is based that are questionable or perhaps not based on the reality of actual expenditures. So for example, in fiscal year 15, faculty salaries were at the aggregate slightly more than $18 million. In FY21, faculty salaries at the aggregate were $16.5 million, a decrease of 9%. We do not anticipate that we will have the same number of faculty next year. In fact, the total number of faculty will decrease without involuntary layoffs, and the total at the aggregate in terms of faculty compensation will also decrease. During that same period from FY15 to FY21, classified had a very modest increase, very tiny increase of 3% over 6 years. However, manager salaries at the aggregate increased by 10%. We're seeing increasing inequity, and this increased inequity has grown dramatically over the past 3 years. In addition, we just received a report from the Chronicle of Higher Education that we are projected, all two-year colleges nationwide are projected to have enrollment increases over the next several years, and we will reach a peak around 2024. That is something that you'll see in my report with a graph from the actual report. Finally, I'd like to share a few comments. I think probably one of the most exciting things that happened today is that we can celebrate the inauguration of President Biden and Vice President Harris. This, I think, is a critical moment to reaffirm the fundamental role of the community college in a vibrant democracy. And I encourage everyone in the campus community to take pause and to consider how Lane Community College can help ensure that we fulfill our responsibility within larger society to mindfully educate students, to think critically, to promote civic engagement, and to actively build a participatory and equitable community. And I'll close with a quote from the AACNU, the American Association of Colleges and Universities. The task of an education allied to democracy is not simply to help students gain knowledge and skills. It is also to assist students in forming the habits of heart and mind that liberate their thinking and equip them for and dispose them to the creation of a more just and inclusive society through civic engagement. And the president of that organization also said that if colleges and universities are to develop the independent and critical thinkers necessary to ensure that democracy is more than a tyranny of numbers, they must affirm that a liberal education helps students, citizens, discern the truth, recognize and digest narratives, and promote an understanding that the world is a collective of interdependent yet equitable systems. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so that concludes our reports in section 6. We have a whole bunch of informational reports. I'd like to suggest if you have any questions regarding those reports that you could email them to the individual, and those questions and responses could be shared with us. Apologize for the length of the meeting tonight. And we have board reports. Are there any board reports at this time? Or personal comments from board members? Angela?
In general, I am sort of opposed to making comments at the end of the meeting because I feel like it gets us into murky waters far too often, but I want to make an exception today. Melanie, your departure is devastating. I know that it's wonderful for you, but I have just really appreciated your presence on this board. You listen deeply. You have a calm and considered presence. Your mind is nimble and flexible. I think back to the time that you praised Rosie for listening and changing her mind when appropriate and when convinced. And I've seen examples of you doing the same thing, which says to me, not just that you are flexible in your mindset, but also that you're committed to your own personal improvement. And I think that that's played out on the board. And I think that working with you has made it very clear to me that your focus has always been what is best for the college. And I will miss that. Thank you for your service.
Chelsea?
Thank you. I also wanted to share my sadness and my joy for Melanie's departure. I hold both of those truths at the same time. I'm so happy for whatever new endeavor it is that you're about to take on. I have my speculations. I'll keep those to myself. And I'm also so saddened, and it is such a loss for our community and for this board and for the college. You have been such an incredible person to work with, and you are someone that I really look up to and deeply respect your knowledge and your care and the amount of time and effort that you put into everything that you do. You have really had a very large impact on me, and I know on many others. And on a personal and professional level, I'm really going to miss you. And I'm so excited for what is next, and can't wait to see what the next journey is for you. So thank you for everything, Melanie, and congratulations on this next endeavor, and can't wait to see what you do next. And I do want to take just a very brief moment. This was something I announced at our board retreat, which was a public meeting, but I want to more formally announce it in this public meeting as well, as it's our first official board meeting of the year, that I am not running for the Zone 5 seat this spring. And so will be an open seat on the ballot. And I am choosing to not do that in order for me to more fully focus on going back to school in the hopes of one day becoming a nurse practitioner. So I just want to formally announce that so that everyone had a chance to hear it. And thank you, everyone, for your time.
Matt?
Thank you. I got to know Melanie Munzer and family when we were running for this board in 2017, and I had the good fortune of running unopposed, and Melanie had two opponents, but really one, because the other opponent dropped out and endorsed her, but was still on the ballot. So Melanie was in a contested race, and our team leaned in, and it was a pleasure to help get you elected. It was a pleasure to live vicariously through your family's trip to Disneyland and Star Wars Adventure, a place I've not been and probably not going to go anytime soon for obvious reasons. It was a pleasure to navigate Washington, D.C. and learn from your expertise on the Hill, a place that I'm incredibly comfortable navigating, but your experience in DC was exemplary, and it was quite clear to myself, and I'm sure Chair Fragla and Brett Rowlett when we were back there just 1 month prior to this pandemic shutting down life as we know it. We were there in February of 2020, advocating for reauthorization of the Higher Education Act, and I remember. I don't know if it was a tweet or a Facebook post, but there was a picture of us in the Senate Finance Committee, now chaired by Senator Ron Wyden, in which I simply said, Melanie Munzer is a boss. You are a boss. And I hope to still continue the staunch advocacy for lowering the cost of community colleges, Melanie Munzer, in whatever new role you assume. Advocating for affordability and creating a tuition-free community college experience, investing in second chance Pell Grants, bolstering job training, technical education, CTE, enacting the DREAM Act, and assisting the thousands of students that have been impacted by our previous president's DACA decisions. Melanie Munzer, to quote President Joe Biden, and man, that sounds great to say, with purpose and resolve, we turn to the tasks of our time. And I look forward to turning to those tasks alongside you in whatever effort in whatever step in this journey you next take. Thank you for your service.
Mike.
Education is a hugely complex enterprise, and it requires somebody to understand the entire enterprise from the very highest level down to the very minute details. And Melanie may be the only person that I've ever encountered that has a command of that entire range. And I don't know what she's going to be doing, but I take great comfort in speculating that she is going to continue to exercise that command, that she is going to continue to put that command of knowledge and experience and expertise to work on behalf of students all over the country, and that she's going to be committed to that for the rest of her life. And I think our entire country is going to be better off for it. Thank you so much for your work at LCC, for your deep understanding of the way the process works, and for helping all of us gain a better understanding of how the entire educational process works. Thank you, Melanie, and best of luck to you.
Rosie.
Thank you. Oh, Melanie. One of the things I admire the most about Melanie Munzer is this is a woman who set a path for herself and is systematically following it. I admire that very much. And it takes some fortitude to take some of the steps you've taken in your career so far, moving your family clear across the country. And of course, Melanie knows that she and I, in terms of personal style, are probably 180 opposite, which is so interesting because we wind up in the same place 99% of the time. So I've enjoyed watching how you can get where I want to be in a totally different fashion from the way I would have gotten there. So that, and Melanie teaches this old dog new tricks once a month. But you know, the thing that we should all admire the most about Melanie is her focus on balancing her own personal, professional ambitions with two little Munzers at home who deserve just as much attention as her professional opportunities do. And I do admire that, up to and including tonight's yay session behind you. It was a great send off for the rest of us. And enjoy that very much, because if you haven't had the opportunity in your life to balance family and profession, it's hard to appreciate how extraordinary of a challenge that is. So Melanie, you have my admiration. I promise to send photo reports about two little succulents, and I'm sure Craig and I will continue to bump into each other online. Thank you for everything, Melanie. We will miss you.
So I will echo everything that has been said about the wonderful, remarkable, amazing, brilliant Melanie Munzer. And I'll keep it short and sweet, and I'll just say I will miss you as a board colleague, but I know I have gained a friend for life. And I look forward to much laughter, even if it is through Zoom or over the telephone together in the future. So, so did you have a final thing you wanted to say? And I don't know, before you go, Marge, did you want to say anything, or? Yeah, we'll let Marge go first and then we'll go back to Melanie.
Thank you. I appreciate you letting me speak during your time. Melanie, I am just excited you're following your dream. And I respect hard decisions career-wise. I clearly understand what it's like to go across the country, and you have to trust your heart. It's the right thing to do. And we trust you. We know you have that big a heart. So thank you for everything you've done. It's been a joy working with you because I feel like colleagues, even though you are my board member, but you understand higher ed so well, and it's a gift. So good luck to you. Godspeed.
Thank you, Marge. Thank you, everybody. I mean, this really means a lot to me. You know, I said earlier, I wanted to share a story because it just, I think, speaks to everything. When I told my son that I was going to be transitioning to a new job and that I have to leave, you know, University of Oregon, and he was like, okay, whatever. And then I was like, and then I have to leave, you know, LCC and the board, and he was very upset. And he was with me. Both of my kids were, but my daughter was very, very young when I was running for office the first time. You know, my son's campaign. He loves coming into these meetings. I told them they could come in a lot tonight if they wanted to kind of say goodbye. But the fact that, you know, I think he's probably picked up on a lot of how I talk about Lane when I'm at home, and how much meaning I put into this role in this college, that my 9-year-old is devastated that I'm not going to be involved with LCC anymore. And I think, you know, when I hear him say that, it means a lot, because it does mean that I think other people can sense the community that this college is, even if it's a 9-year-old being aware of that. So I just wanted to share because that felt really special to me. And like I said, I'm very excited for my next step. I will be very busy because there is a lot to do. But it is bittersweet because I love you all. I love this college. I love Oregon. I love the students here. I love the faculty, the staff, everybody who is here has done tremendous work. And it is, you know, a lot still needs to get done for the college. But like I said, I think you have some really, really good people who are here to help accomplish that. And I thank you all for the kind words from the bottom of my heart, and I am going to miss you. So thank you.
Okay, so if there are no final items that anybody needs to address for the good of the order, our next future meeting date is February 3rd, when we have a work session. And I am going to adjourn this meeting. Oh, before I adjourn the meeting, I need to remind you that we have an executive session coming up, and you will need to leave this meeting and use the link that Donna is going to send. I would like to suggest that we take a quick break, 5 minutes, and that we re-adjourn, that we start again at 9:10 there or so. So we're adjourned.